Welcome to the Talkin VAWLS Network. My name is Boogie Bentley. You know, one of the things I probably hear the most when talking recruiting right here on the Talkin VAWLS Network is it's just not good enough. It's not good enough, Boogie. You've got to have a top 5 class in order to compete in the SEC. You got to sign more 5 stars. And I ask you here today, is that true? Is that true? Does it take a top 5 class year in and year out in order to win SEC championships and compete for national championships? Because you go back and you look at what Josh Heupel did in 2022, won 11 games, Orange Bowl victory over Clemson. Hendon Hooker should have been in New York for that Heisman Trophy presentation. Not going to sit here and pretend that he deserved to win it, but he deserved to represent the University of Tennessee for that Heisman Trophy presentation. And look, at the time, Tennessee had not signed a top 10 class in the previous 4 cycles. You look at the mass exodus of players. I mean, the closest was 11th in 2020 under Jeremy Pruitt, but I went back and looked at numbers. Tennessee's not signed a top 10 class since 2015. So does that kind of prove my logic, my thought process of it's more about roster management, the transfer portal, COVID seniors? What's more important here? Does it take a top 5 class? You know, I was listening to On 3, Steve Wiltfong, Chad Simmons. Still feels weird to say that. Listen to them talk about Tennessee and their opportunity in the class of 25. Can they sign a top 10 class? We're going to get into their comments. We're going to take a look at it. But as always, you guys know what to do. Do all that YouTube stuff. Smash that thumbs up just below the video. It's quick, free, easy, helps the channel. I would appreciate it. Also, if this is your first video, the first time ever tuning into the Talkin VAWLS Network, welcome. We're not experts here. We're not insiders. This channel is fans talking about Tennessee football. For the fans, by the fans, Tennessee football all day, every day of the year. If you like what we do, make sure you subscribe. Click that bell for notifications. You're not going to miss out when we drop a video or when we do a live stream. Going to be live tonight. Playing NCAA 14 revamped, but we're going to be talking all things Tennessee football. Also tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, Talkin VAWLS live. Going to be breaking down spring camp. Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to be doing a fan call-in show. That's where you, the listener, gets to come on, hang out. As long as you're a member of the channel, you can do that by hitting the join button down below for as little as $1. But let's get into it. Let's take a listen to Steve Wiltfong, Chad Simmons talking about Tennessee football. Can they sign a top 10 class? You know, we as fans are looking for that top 5 class. That's what I'm looking for in 2025. And we'll get into that. We'll break it down. But what are you looking for? Top 10? Top 5? Let's hear from the guys over at On 3.
Guys, look, Tennessee right now currently sitting outside the top 10. Last cycle, they finished at number 13. So I want to know, does Tennessee have the juice on the trail to finish top 10 this cycle?
Well, they're in on the right names if they want to make a run for the top 10 recruiting class. Guys like David Sanders Jr., Andrew Babalola. The Vols are trying to sign a special offensive line class this cycle. Trey McNutt, a safety from Ohio. Bo Jackson, a running back from Ohio. There are a lot of blue chippers that are keeping an eye on Tennessee right now that are going to continue taking visits there this summer.
Yeah, they're in on Jamie French, many other playmakers too, obviously. I think they're in the right spot, like you said, Steve, with the heavy hitters, 5 stars, 4 stars, top guys to get involved with.
All right, you guys.
I think the big thing is when you're listening to them talk, right? Some of the names they just rattled off, David Sanders, Jamie French, some elite level players. Those are 5-star guys. And I think a lot of times when you're following recruiting, you hear Tennessee's in on, Tennessee has a shot here, Tennessee's deep in it, right? All those buzzwords we hear when you're talking about recruiting, and that's just it. Tennessee has to finish. They've got to finish on some of these guys. You look at who they've already signed. They've got 3 guys ranked inside the top 300 according to On 3, already committed in this class of 25 with George McIntyre, Jack Van Dorsey, and most recently Ethan Utley. You got to continue to add those elite top guys inside the top 300, inside the top 100. Looking at 5-star prospects, can you close on a guy like David Sanders? Can you close on a guy that I made a video on yesterday, Caleb Cunningham? Can you close on some of these elite level prospects? But one thing that I like, you know, one of the things, you look back at history with Glenn Ellerbe, and he kind of had, I think a couple of years ago, when you look at Francis Mauigoa, right? Lucas Simmons, Shamrod Umrov, Stanton Ramel, they had 4 guys that they were really targeting. They only got 1 of them. I think Glenn Ellerbe has cast a really wide net in this class of 25 on the offensive line. But again, the guys that they just mentioned, David Sanders, he's the number 2 overall player in the country. Also mentioned Andrew Babalola, ranked 14th overall in the country. Tennessee deep in it with David Sanders. Sounds like Tennessee and Clemson, Georgia on the outside looking in. You look at Andrew Babalola, I think that's more of an outside shot. So when you talk about Babalola being 14th, then you roll down to Jalen Matthews, also a 4-star prospect. Tennessee in a very good spot for the offensive tackle out of New Jersey. He's ranked 224th. Still a top 300 guy, still an elite level talent, but there's a big drop off from 14th to 224. So can they close on some of these highly rated guys? Another guy that Tennessee was in it with, Josh Petty, 4-star offensive tackle out of Georgia. Ranked 18th in the country overall, but he's also a guy that grew up a Tennessee fan. Sounds like a long shot now, but you continue to roll through the list. 3 guys that are going to be in town this upcoming weekend. Juan Gaston, another 4-star offensive tackle, ranked 144th overall. Dontrell Glover, 4-star interior offensive lineman, inside the top 250. Douglas Utu, another guy that seems like kind of a long shot here, but number 39 ranked player overall, another 4-star offensive tackle. So a lot of elite talent there, all ranked in the top 300, but can you land the big fish like David Sanders? Can you land the big fish like Babalola? Let's hear more from the guys over at On3.
Guys hit on it. You talked about offensive line a little bit. And last year, they made a major run at Jordan Seaton. Didn't work out. This year, it's David Sanders. He's the prize for Tennessee. I gotta know, though, do you think Tennessee has a real shot at landing the number 1 offensive tackle in America?
The simple answer is yes. They're very much in the mix, Josh. I mean, you probably agree, Steve, I think, with that. We talked about him before, obviously, with Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, but Tennessee's right there, a major school there. I think position of need probably starts with the offensive line at Tennessee, from David Sanders to Juan Gaston to Jalen Matthews. You mentioned Andrew Babalola. They're in for some top offensive linemen, and that's a big need. That and D-line, I think, are 1 and 2 for them in this class, this cycle. They're very much involved with David Sanders.
He's made some rounds this spring: Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State. He has officials coming up with them, South Carolina, but Tennessee, they still have their 2 visits, an unofficial in April and then the official visit in June. Feels a great connection with that coaching staff. I think Tennessee absolutely is very much in it for David Sanders Jr. And anyone projecting a school for him right now, I think, is premature, because I could still see him ending up at a few different places.
All right, lots of
Again, in it for David Sanders, deep in it. They've got a shot at David Sanders. Can they close? Can they close on the big fish like David Sanders? Can they close on Jamie French or Caleb Cunningham, one of these 5-star prospects? Because, again, you look at history. They missed on Jordan Seaton. They missed on Carnell Tate. They missed on Francis Mauigoa, Williams Winery. The list goes on and on. It's always about being in it, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Can they close? Can they finish on some of these big-time prospects in the class of 2025? I think that's the difference here. That's the difference between the top 10 class, top 5 class, or are you a top 20 class? What are we looking at when push comes to shove? Let's hear more from the guys over at On3.
of recruiting left, but it's starting to heat up in the spring, and then we know what happens in the summer. What do you guys think, though, Tennessee must accomplish in the 2025 cycle?
Well, I like the way that Tennessee's been recruiting on the defensive side of the football, and for them to continue to add difference makers in that front 7, I think is key for them as they continue their trajectory as a program. When you look at the teams that compete for an SEC championship year in and year out, they're typically really good at quarterback, and I love the way that Tennessee has recruited that position under center, but they need to continue to land difference makers year in and year out in the front 7 that can play championship level football. That's how they will continue to make the next steps in the sport.
Yeah, all about the trenches, I think, to finish out this class. But then you get look in state too, Cameron Sparks, Raydarius Jackson, guys that want to play with a guy like George McIntyre to make big plays on the skill positions as well. So I think if you start at home, you just got Ethan Utley last week. You want to get Cameron Sparks. You want to get Jackson from Memphis. I think you'll go there as well.
All right, Tennessee fans, let's talk about it. Is this a
top 10 class? I'm going to ask you, is it a top 5 class? But you hear them talking about it, right? What's the focus here? You got to have your quarterback. You got Nico. You got George. You got to have guys to protect the quarterback. I preach it every single day on this channel, but now they're talking about it. You got to have those offensive tackles. You got to have those guys on the defensive line. And we look what Rodney Garner's done since returning to Tennessee. I mean, he's done that with this defensive line. You look, it's the strength of this football team in 2024. Yeah, this is a Josh Heupel offensive attack football team, and the strength is that defensive line. James Pierce, Bryson Eason, Omar Norman Lott, Tyree West, Omari Thomas, Elijah Simmons. They're stacked 3 deep across that defensive line. The biggest question for 2025 is, can Tennessee finish. You know, you look what Josh Heupel has done since arriving at Tennessee. 15th in the class of 2022, 12th in the class of 23, 13th in 2024. Right now, the class of 25 sits at 10th. And I think this is the year. I've said it multiple times. I think Josh Heupel this is the year that he's really going to be graded for what he does on the recruiting trail. No more excuses, no more NCAA investigation to talk about, no more mass exodus of players. You've had time to get your guys in place. Now you got to go out and prove it on the field, and I think we're going to see that in 2024. I'm between 9 and 10 wins. I think Josh Heupel can make a run at the college football playoff, and I think that is when you're going to stop seeing these top 15 classes and start seeing those top 10, top 5, top classes. A lot of information here. I love what the guys over there at On3 had to say. I think Tennessee has a very realistic shot at top 10, possibly a top 5 class. What do you say? Put it in the comment section. Let's talk about it. As always, smash that thumbs up on the way out the door. I would appreciate it. Hope to see you guys in the chat tonight. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about spring camp. There's a lot that I'm excited about coming out of spring camp. We'll talk about it tonight, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. But that is going to do it for this one. This is the Talkin VAWLS Network. My name is Boogie Bentley. Go Big Orange.